This week we are going to create a family timeline. This will be a great opportunity for us to become more familiar with our family's past and to compare our lives with theirs. There will be a worksheet going home that has questions about your family. Your parents will be able to help you answer these questions, so don't worry. And also, when returning the worksheet, please include photographs or anything else you feel would be appropriate for this project. So, artifacts, anything you want. The worksheet will ask you to list your family members. Start with your family, so your parents, brothers, and sisters. You can even include your pets if you'd like. And work your way back. Include the dates of birth, marriages, and deaths. If you have a large family, which is perfectly fine, just include your family and your grandparents, and if you want, your grandparents' parents. Something that may be a factor for your family is immigration. If that's the case, please include which family member or members, what country they came from, and when they came from. Another factor we would like to discuss in class and compare are occupations. What job did your grandparents have? Does that job still exist today? And what about your parents' jobs? Do their jobs today, would they have existed 30 years ago? So that's how we're going to use this information. To create this timeline, we are going to use white butcher paper. It's going to be about 5 feet in length, so it's going to be a pretty long timeline, and that's going to be provided at school. Students will use a straight edge to create the line and to mark off the years. And this is also where the photos and artifacts are going to come in, and we will attach these to the timeline. And also, students are welcome to bring any arts and crafts materials that they want to use for this project. It's their timelines. I want them to make it their own. And I would like the timeline to be marked off starting at 1910 going to 2010. This way, if students want to add something that they found interesting about their family that is outside the 3-generation mark, they have room to do so. And once that is done, I want the students to write in the important dates, which is the date of birth, marriages, and deaths, and students can also add any other information that they want at this time too. And after writing in the information, I would then want the students to paste on the pictures. And if students can find pictures, they can draw them in, use crayon, marker, paints, whatever they want. And this is also where they can add the arts and crafts materials that they brought in, if they did bring it in. And once the timelines have been completed, the students will present them to the class. I plan on doing this over the course of a week, on average about 5 students a day. And there's going to be a sign-up sheet going around, so parents are more than welcome to come in and watch their student present their information. And I want the student to pick one family member to discuss in class. This person should not be a parent or brother or sister, and no pets, please. And I would like the students to consider the differences between themselves and that family member. There are 4 main questions that I would like students to be ready to answer. Where did this family member grow up? What was their school like? How many brothers and sisters did they have? And what was their job? And here's an example. Students' answers do not need to be elaborate. They just have to be informative. So, my Grandpa Joe lived in Nebraska. He grew up in the 1930s. His school had 2 classrooms. He had 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and he grew up to be a farmer. So, these answers would be perfectly fine, and they can add more if they'd like. It's completely up to the student. Now I want students to compare the life of that family member to their own. How is their school different? Do they have more classrooms, less classrooms? Their home life, do they have more brothers and sisters, less? And since students don't have jobs yet, I want them to consider their parents' jobs and compare them to that family member. And here's another example of what a student might say. I live in Michigan. My school has more than 2 classrooms, so it's larger than Grandpa Joe's. I only have one brother, so I have a smaller family, and my parents work in offices, not outside like Grandpa. There are some other areas that I would like the students to consider and compare, technology being a big one. I want students to look at the things that they use every day, so television, cell phones, iPods, video games, and compare the technology of what they have today to what their grandparents grew up with. Their grandparents probably only had one phone instead of everyone having a cell phone, and they probably didn't watch as much TV. They were outside more, and I also want them to look at what they did in their spare time. Do the students spend more time outside than their grandparents, or did their grandparents spend more time outside? And their grandparents probably didn't have video games to play. So I want them to look at that. And lastly, I want the students to look at the types of transportation. Look at the differences. Do you ride in cars more? Do you ride your bike more compared to your grandparents or people of that generation? So I want the students to really consider these things. I want students to learn about their family's past through this project, and also how much different and yet similar their lives are to that of their past family members. And here's my works cited page for the photographs I used throughout this project.